Where have we come from? How do companies think about green? And I think fundamentally there's been this idea that green is an invader in the boardroom and in business, and it has no place. It's about cost, it's about compliance with the law, and that's it. It's not about revenue growth, about brand, about all those good things that we're trying to achieve in business. And this is the biggest mental hurdle, standing between us and standing between companies getting the most value out of sustainability. Questions about water, probably the most tangible environmental issue, and the one that I think is really not debatable. People can debate the science on toxics, on climate change, whatever it is, but when you're out of water, you're out of water. There's really no debate about it, and this is becoming an issue around the world. The bank HSBC has estimated that the market for climate change solutions, for environmental solutions, will be $2 trillion by 2020. And the definition of what is a green or clean tech business is much broader than people realize. It's not just solar panels. It's any hybrid car. It's any industry that's serving those businesses. If you make ball bearings that go into wind turbines, that's a green job, that's green business. These are big chunks of the economy. And this is why Jeff Immelt at GE cares. Because last year GE hit this very important, very unknown tipping point. GE now has more revenue from wind turbines than gas turbines. Again, to drive innovation. We want to raise the price of carbon, which will raise their cost of business within their four walls, there's no doubt. A cap on carbon has the same effect as a tax. So why do they want to do this? These are some of the biggest energy users in the world. Well, part of it is the CEO of Duke Energy has said, you know, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. You have to be a part of the discussion. And this is happening. But part of it's just good business. As I said, GE wants to sell the world's solutions to environmental problems. Alcoa would like to sell more aluminum into the transportation sector, lighten vehicles, reduce emissions. DuPont has cut its emissions 75% over the last 20 years. If you raise the cost of carbon, it does pretty well competitively. So let me give you a sense of, one of the really important pressures. I think the greening of the supply chain is the most important pressure driving this green business movement, and it is definitely not going away, because you have companies like Walmart now pressuring all of their value chain, all of their supply chains in a pretty profound way. This is the most powerful company the world's ever seen. The Fortune 500 list came out a few weeks ago. They're about $405 billion in sales. The next biggest, Exxon at $260. The difference between Walmart and the next biggest would be ranked 7th on its own. This is a very, very large company. It's about 4 times the size of every other large non-oil company, HP, IBM, etc. And the pressure they're putting on suppliers is the real story. They're reducing their own footprint. They're lowering their own costs. They're doing that in stores, in their fleet, etc. But it's what they're doing to suppliers. They've asked a series of suppliers to give them a carbon footprint. How much energy did it take to get this product to our shelves? They then set standards on toys. Do you remember a couple of years ago, Mattel discovered that lead and kids shouldn't go together, that they don't go well together. So Walmart and others said, we don't want to have lead in our toys in our store. So they set a standard on how much lead was allowed, parts per million, in the packaging and paint. That standard was 85% more strict than the federal government's. Over half of these really big companies have said, we're going to deselect suppliers who don't meet our carbon management criteria. This is a force to watch. This is not government compliance. This is companies saying, we're just not going to buy from you. And trust me, the auto industry is doing the same thing. And I think, you have a new white paper out you're going to hear more about on sustainability. They sent it to me in advance, which was great, so I could see how does this industry think of itself on sustainability. And there's a chart in there that I found really compelling, because this is a story about you as suppliers in your value chain to your customers, about the energy use, the energy demand per kilogram of complete part, and you're in a very good position to tell an energy story. I don't know all the details of every other possible environmental impact on chemicals and toxics, water use, etc. But the energy is the big one. That's the one people are talking about. And your customers are going to be asking if they're not already. And this is a good story. But very recently, IBM said to its suppliers, you need to share data. Now this was like the Walmart requests, but it was a little different, because what they said was, you're going to measure your data. You have to have an environmental management system now. It's mandated. You have to measure your data, and you have to be transparent. You don't have to give it directly to us, but you have to put it online. You have to share it with everybody. There's a demand now coming from consumers and big corporate customers for complete openness about what's in everything. So I get to stand in front of people that represent a whole industry, the leaders of a particular company. I talk to all kinds of audiences, and I realize, if this isn't the group that's going to figure it out, if you can't help figure out how we're going to produce metal parts, how we're going to help the transportation sector use drastically less stuff and energy, then who's going to do it? And so I've used this phrase that people have probably seen in social movements: if not us, then who? If not now, then when? I didn't know where this came from, so I did some very deep research. I Googled it, and I found out very quickly that this is 2,000 years old, a piece of it. It came from a rabbinical scholar in the time of Jesus. This idea has been moving around our society for almost as long as we've been a society, that we all have a piece of this puzzle. We all have a role to play. So I ask you to join this movement, and I think the announcements you're going to see today are a very, very good start. To join this movement to help create more sustainable, healthy, and profitable companies, communities, and country. Thank you very much.